Hey guys, it's the AK here. Thought I'd do a final update video on my M74 Sporter here that you've seen in plenty of my other videos before. Ever since doing the update video on the RH10, I wanted to do a video on my 74 in a similar format to kind of explain to you everything that I've done to this rifle and how I've updated it and kind of what my primary use for this rifle is, and the reasoning for why I outfitted it the way that I did. So just like in the RH10 video, in the description I'll have a list of every single part and component that I have on this rifle in case you want to use some for your own build. So when this rifle first came to me, it came just in the bone stock M74 kind of configuration. It came just with plain Jane surplus Bulgarian furniture and nothing more. It didn't come with a sling, didn't come with a cleaning rod, none of that. It's pretty plain Jane AK, which is totally fine. From the outset, when I had gotten the rifle, I wanted to have a modern Kalashnikov rifle. I've always been a fan of decked out AKs because I like modernizing the system and improving just how versatile the Kalashnikov can be, especially over here in America, because I kind of feel that's I almost kind of feel like it's a challenge from the AR community, like, oh, how modular can your weapon system be? Well, you actually can see this, how modular a Kalashnikov can be. So from the outset, I didn't exactly know what I wanted to do as far as the functionality of the rifle in terms of what philosophy of use or whatever that I had for the rifle was my main goal for it, and that developed the more that I outfitted it. When I had if you follow my channel for any length of time, you've noticed this rifle's had many different accessories on it. You'll see the vertical grip changing position on it. See, I'm getting new safeties, different stocks, experimenting. Well, I finally got it in a configuration that I'm actually really proud of, and I don't see myself changing, to be quite honest. So let's cut the chit chat and let's get down to the nitty gritty. So let's go from muzzle end to rear of the gun. So it still has the standard 74 style brake on here, which I believe this is the original military brake that was on the rifle. And I have no real desire to change it. Whenever I think of an AK-74, one of the most distinguishing features I think of is that 74 style brake. So I really have no plans on changing it because it keeps the muzzle rise down. Not that the 545 has much recoil to begin with, but it kind of makes the gun, and it's very practical. People talk about the muzzle flash of the 74 brake, but in reality, it's really not that big of a deal. In most cases, what I've seen with this is it'll store up some powder and then ignite it all at once, and then just kind of go back to just doing its thing. So great muzzle device. I don't really see myself changing it. If I was ever going to change out the muzzle device on this, I would probably either get a one of those four-piece Bulgarian comp, four-piece Bulgarian flash hiders, but I really have no desire to change it on here. I do have an East German cleaning rod on there, just for the sake of throwing that out there, because the rifle didn't come with a cleaning rod, so I put one on it, and interestingly enough, it's an East German one. So there's that. So as far as the handguard is concerned, this is an OD green Magpul AKM handguard for the rifle. This rifle is where I learned the benefits of the MOE handguard, because it's just how modular it is, and the fact that it comes in cool colors. And so yeah, I've talked about the Magpul MOE handguard before quite a bit. It's modular, it's lightweight, it's durable, it's got a heat shield in it, and it's pretty affordable. And it's really hard to recommend other AK handguards when you have such a great option like this out there. As far as on the other side of the rifle, this is a Surefire G2x light on there, and it's mounted with a UTG flashlight mount, which actually was a part of an older UTG flashlight that I had on here forever. And that light, while it was effective, it was durable, and it had a lot of lumens. It was a heavy optic, and it's better as more as like a single-hand use flash, or a single-hand flashlight, than really a tactical light. But this one is it's a lot lighter and with similar illumination, and yeah, it's a really good light, and it saves weight and is pretty effective, and coming from a really well-known brand for flashlights, so it's cool there. Now, as far as the vertical grip here, this is just the typical Magpul MOE vertical grip. So because the MOE handguard will take M-lock accessories, of course, it just screws in right here at the bottom of the handguard there. I've been a fan of vertical grips on AKs, or just on really tactical rifles as a whole, because even though I think you're totally fine with just holding the handguard in a conventional kind of configuration, I like using it kind of sort of like a hand stop when firing the rifle. And also if, you know, for whatever reason I'm putting a bunch of rounds through it and the handguard gets hot, especially on AKs, because AKs really build up heat quite a bit because it's got that big old piston up in here. The handguards get hot pretty quick, so it gives you a secondary area to grab a hold of before you'd have to start moving your hand back here to deal with heat. So that's why I got the vertical grip on there. Is it ultimately needed? No, I could totally run this without it, but I just like it. It's cool. As far as the sling setup that I got on here, it's pretty similar to my RH-10. I've always been a big fan of just traditional Russian AKM, AK-74 slings, because they're insanely durable and they're just fantastic. So, and I've always been a fan of 2-point slings, so it's a simple system. Again, following the KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid. It just works. I have no real desire to get some sort of fancy doodad sling that really doesn't do anything better than just a traditional military sling that actually has decades of combat service along with it. So there's that. Again, standard rear sight on here. I have no reason to swap that out or change it because standard AK sights work. I have no problem with them. And actually, this is kind of an unpopular opinion out there in the interwebs, but I'm actually more of a fan of the front post rear notch configuration of AKs and Eastern European rifles compared to the aperture setup found on the AR and other Western rifles. Mainly because I'm just more used to it. That's my theory on it so far. I'm just more used to these kinds of sights, which is kind of a rarity over here in the States, but I don't know. I just seem to like them. I seem to perform better with them, which is kind of interesting. So, going back, the standard magazine that I keep in here at all times is a Bulgarian Circle 10, which is a surplus magazine. It's polymer fiberglass composite, and it's got steel feed lips, steel locking tabs, reinforced in steel all throughout the magazine, including the foreplate. Probably the best AK magazine ever made, and in my opinion, the best magazine system ever made, just because it's a great combination of weight savings and durability. This is loaded up with Hornady VMAX. That's my home defense load for this, and I've actually caught some heat from people talking about that, saying that, oh, well, the VMAX doesn't penetrate a ton and blah, blah, blah. Well, here's kind of my defense on that. When it comes to home defense and handguns, I definitely prefer a cartridge that can punch through things better, because when it comes to handguns, those are actually known for if they expand too much, they won't reach that 14 inches threshold, because again, handguns are underpowered, so they really get their lethality from just basic bullet penetration, being able to punch through bone and all that stuff. Because if you don't know, the FBI 12-inch minimum is there for the sake of if you had to punch, if you're shooting at an adversary, if for whatever reason you'd have to shoot them, and if the round had to pass through their arm, it would still be able to reach the minimum distance to be able to hit the heart. That's kind of the general gist of that. But with a rifle, I find, especially a dedicated fragmenting cartridge like the Hornady VMAX that will just go off like a bomb in tissue, I don't think that's as much of a concern, because if I hit somebody in the arm with Hornady VMAX, I'm probably going to take the arm off and blood loss would quickly ensue. So I'm not as much concerned about that 12-inch minimum when talking about rifles versus pistols. Okay, so there's that. And as you could probably figure, this is my home defense gun of choice, because as it's outfitted, because it has a light and defensive ammunition in there. As far as the safety goes, I have changed this out to a Polish military style of safety. It has that extended tab. Sorry about the lighting in here. Lighting is not the best right now. But has that extended tab, so I don't have to break my firing grip, which is super nice. I actually got this from the AK Operators Union store. Go support them as much as you can. Robski is the best AK guy on YouTube. He's done so much for the AK community that I had to support him when I saw they had him in stock. So they do have an updated version of this enhanced safety on their website, to where this tab is not as large. It's actually smaller, and it's actually it's a little bit smaller, so it doesn't snag on as much stuff. And one thing I've noticed with this enhanced safety is if I'm not careful and this is down and I'm trying to rack, you know, during doing the AK roll and charging the rifle, I can find myself, if I'm not careful, scraping the side of my finger on that enlarged safety tab. So it's more or less of a training issue than I would say that's a functional issue, but that's neither here nor there. This type of safety has actually been used on the Polish barrel rifle for a number of years in the Polish military, and they haven't changed it, so I don't really see a big reason to change it for me. Okay, now let's get to probably the most obvious change that I've done to this rifle. What's up with the scope? So this is a Monstrum Tactical 1:4 power scope mounted on a Aimsport Gen 2 AK side rail. And as you guys know, if you follow my channel, I did a video a couple years ago now asking for some people's input on good side rails, because every AK is a little bit different, and every country's side rail is a little bit different. And they were all made of slightly different specs. And one of the most common things I would see on the side rail on my rifle is the optic would sit at an awkward angle. It would usually sit at an angle like this on the receiver. So it would sit a bit cockeyed, and depending on the mount, I had tried several Midwest Industries mounts. I had tried some different Chinese UTG style of side rails and things like that, and this didn't sit well on the rifle. Either they were a bit too high off of the dust cover, off of the receiver, or they would sit at this weird angle where the optic wouldn't be centered over the bore. I didn't like that, and so, but I actually found an optics mount that actually sits perfect on my AK, which is totally awesome. So this Aimsport Gen 2 mount, it's about $70 depending on where you get them from. They came out, I believe, last year, and it's nothing super fancy, but the nice thing about it is it sits super low to the receiver. So if you have a similar side rail to mine, which would be a standard AKM side rail, it's going to sit super low to your receiver. You can see your iron sights through the rail itself, which is pretty cool if you're into that. And it mounts very securely, retains zero, and very lightweight. Because as you can see, they cut a big, chunk of metal out of here, and it's actually a pretty lightweight scope rail, and it's retained zero on this optic from the past couple range trips I've taken this rifle out to, and I've taken the optics mount on and off, and it's retained zero. So it's really cool. One thing I will notice about this is, and I don't know if this was due to my negligence, a fault of the mount, or somewhere in between. So typically the way this system works is you will rotate the lever back and forth to lock it into position. And typically what this will do, this part right here will move back and forth and will lock into a little ledge right here to make sure this doesn't get bumped or anything, or get knocked out of position or anything like that. But one thing that I noticed is from my most recent range trip, this part has lost all its spring tension. So that's something to keep in mind. That's not a big deal for me, because just like the old traditional Russian mounts, they didn't have any sort of locking mechanism. They were just held on by tension, and we haven't seen any problems out of those mounts. So I'm not concerned about it. It's just something to report to you guys if that matters to you. I have no concerns of this falling off the rifle due to recoil or anything like that, but it's just something to consider. Now, as far as the optic itself, a 1:4 power Monstrum tactical scope. It is illuminated, and but I'm not super concerned about that. So as some of you may know, I used to have a Bushnell TRS-25 on this thing, and I wasn't super crazy about that. And the reason being for that was it was a cheaper optic. It worked great, but the battery life was not that great on it, and I wasn't a fan of the thought of having an optic on my rifle that requires batteries, or something that I would have to turn on in a stressful situation, and heaven forbid a home defense situation, forgetting to turn your dot on. So the nice thing about having a traditional scope is the reticle is etched into the glass. It doesn't require batteries, and especially in a home defense close quarter situation, you really don't have to worry about turning any sort of illumination on, even though the scope does have that setting. You don't have to worry about doing that because your weapon light is providing all the illumination you need. So you have an enhanced sight picture with an optic versus irons, which truthfully though, AK irons do really good in close quarters, especially if you're using the old caveman EOTech technique. But even still, you're still getting the benefits of an optic without having to worry about the batteries, which is really cool. And I've always, this rifle is kind of set up to be a kind of a do-it-all rifle for me. So it can range out from close quarters, let's say out to 300 yards, because again, you have that 1 to 4 power magnification. And in some of the videos that I've shown on my channel before, I can consistently hit steel past 200 with this. And so it's really increased the capabilities of the rifle with an enhanced sighting system. So it's a cheaper optic. It's not the most high-end thing in the world. It's not a Leupold. It's not anything like that. It's not a Trijicon. But for what it is in my budget, it works great, and I don't have any qualms about the durability or anything of it because, again, it's listed as being pretty waterproof and shockproof, and I believe there are some torture tests of it out there on the internet, and it seems to hold up pretty well. So this has served me admirably, and it's actually increased the versatility of my rifle. And what I think is kind of neat about this in particular is the fact that if you look at all of the old Combat nations that had AK-74s, the East Germans actually had a dedicated DMR setup for some of their AK-74s with a SVD style of reticle, which I think is really cool. And I think this kind of setup on an AK-74 kind of brings that concept back, because remember, 545 is a very flat shooting cartridge. It's a more accurate cartridge than 7.62-39, and you can actually take advantage of having a magnified optic on this more so than with a 7.62-39 rifle. So enough about the optic, let's move on. So as far as the grip here, nothing too fancy. This is just a typical Magpul MOE AK pistol grip. Works great. As far as the AR buffer tube that's on here, this is a CAA polymer AR stock tube adapter. This is for commercial spec, not mil spec, which that kind of made sourcing the MOE OD green commercial stock to be a bit of a challenge because this specific model is no longer made. So I kind of had to source that from searching on Gunbroker and eBay and stuff. So that was kind of a pain, but I got it figured out. And then this is one that I'm definitely gonna have to annotate down below in the comments because I don't remember the exact name. I don't remember the exact name of this product, but this is a sling attachment system for the MOE. I don't know if how well you can see that because of the lighting, but it's attached from Allen screws, and basically what that does is it allows you to attach a sling loop to the back of an MOE stock on here, so that way I could mount my Russian stock. And again, as you see here, this has got a MOE AR style stock on here, which again, I have no problem putting AR stocks on my AKs because it enhances the system, and you're seeing Russian Spetsnaz units doing the same on their AK-74s and AKM rifles. So this is the current state of my AK-74. I couldn't be happier with it. It is a really fantastic setup. It served me well, and I don't really see myself changing this setup anytime soon. If there's anything that could ever tempt me to change it, it would be to put it back in the original AK-74 style of furniture, whether that be polymer or wood, and putting a classic Russian optic on it. But whether or not I'm going to do it in the future, I have no idea. I doubt it, just because of how versatile this system is, and it really increases the capabilities of the rifle. And before I forget, one of the things with this is I wanted to have a good balance between versatility and weight, because as you know, the more stuff you add on your rifle, the heavier it gets. So final weight of this rifle, as if my math is correct, from looking at the weight of all the parts with it fully loaded, weighs somewhere in between 8 1/4 and 8.5 pounds. So that's not overbearing. I'm going to say it leans closer to 8 1/4. And for what that is, I think that will serve my needs pretty well. So, and that's one of the reasons why you don't see a quad rail on here. You don't see any sort of large heavy rails besides the optics mount, because polymer is lighter than steel, or lighter than aluminum. So hope you guys have enjoyed the video. This has been a long time coming for this rifle. I've really worked my butt off to try to find a configuration and an optics mount that really worked well for this rifle, and I finally got it. So if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, leave them down below. Be sure to like and comment on the video, and as always guys, this has been the AK Geek, and I hope all of you have a fantastic day.